What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 127. We're back to recap a really entertaining week one of college football. There was a lot of good, bad, and ugly out there for the SEC this weekend. A lot of marquee matchups for us to go through tonight, and obviously just excited that the season's back and kicked off, and we got a lot to recap tonight. So we're just going to jump right in. And honestly, I want to start in Nashville with Vanderbilt Commodores, the biggest upset of the weekend. I believe they were the only double-digit underdog to win this weekend. I think I saw a tweet.
Other than last night. Other than last night.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, BC ended up winning, but before that, so only two, I guess, double-digit
Yeah.
underdogs winning outright. I believe only two out of 58 or 59 games, I believe, with that point spread. So really impressive win for Clark Lee and the Vanderbilt Commodores to kick off this season. Man, you could tell immediately how improved they were. I think on the line of scrimmage, and it wasn't the entire game, but there was large portions of this game where they were dictating things up front on both sides of the ball. They jumped out to a 17-0 lead. Diego Pavia, I mean, that dude's just a gamer. I mean, we've seen it before with him, with New Mexico State, some of those transfers they have. Just thought he was really impressive. I mean, not the sharpest passer, but a guy that's just tough as nails and going to do whatever it takes to make a play. And I think you saw that over and over in this game against Virginia Tech. And, helped Vandy pull it out in overtime. And like I said, just I feel like it's a game that can change, the trajectory of Vandy's season as far as them being able to overachieve a little bit. I just think that was a huge confidence booster for the entire program, and I just wanted to give them a shout out to start because that was, definitely one of the bigger wins of the weekend, especially against a solid, what should be a solid Virginia Tech team in the ACC. So, yeah, just looked like a totally different team as far as up front being able to dictate things. You don't see Vandy kind of leaning on people very often, especially a quality opponent like that. And they got it done, man. They made the plays down the stretch after giving up a 17-0 lead, but just really impressed with that victory for Vandy and Clark Lee. And big shout out to them for a really, really nice week one win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were ready to play. They're definitely a different team than they were last year. Still a bunch of things to clean up, but it's week one. You're excited to see them go out there and play. And man, they took them down to the wire, jumped on them early. I thought they were going to run away with it after the first quarter was done with. I mean, the biggest thing that sticks out to me, though, from the Vandy perspective, is their defense only allowed Virginia Tech to rush for 75 yards. They had 30 carries, 75 yards, so 2.5 yards a pop. That's it's pretty damn good. I mean, they allowed them to throw it a little bit, but they did have an interception. Vanderbilt fumbled 3 times, recovered all 3 fumbles, but they're going to have to clean that up. But definitely the grit of this team is something I've never seen in Vandy before. Not that they ever laid down or quit, but it's just I never saw a Vandy team fight the way this team fought on Saturday, man. It was a very fun game. I actually had a little bit of money laying on the Vandy spread, so I made some money on this game, so that was fun. Clark Lee, offensive guy, offensive lineman himself, so he know he's going to get the trenches right. He wants the trenches to be, that's the heartbeat of every team. That's the soul of every team. You got to be physical there. You got to be bigger, faster, stronger, and you can see it happening down there. You can see it's starting to. He's putting the pieces together, and they're getting better. I mean, Diego Pavia, he had over 100 rushing yards, over almost 200 passing yards, 2 touchdowns passing. So he really had a breaking out party, coming out party for Vanderbilt. Which, excuse me, if you watched any of the Auburn New Mexico State game last year, you're not really surprised by that. Dude's been doing that. He's a big-time athlete. He's just on a much bigger stage now. I thought he did fantastic. You're right. He's not the best passer, but the way to describe him is he's a gamer. I mean, straight up, when the lights come on, nothing's too big for him. He's going to find a way to get it done. It might not be the prettiest way, but he's going to find a way to get it done. Watching him win that game in overtime, man, when it got taken up, like I said, they had the big lead early. And then they kind of Virginia Tech started slowly chipping away. And then they finally tied it back up, and I was like, oh man, Vandy's going to lose this game in overtime. Like, they fought this whole time, they're going to lose it in the end. And then they turn around in overtime and find a way to score quick and then get a stop. So that when they got that fourth down stop in overtime, I was as big a Vandy fan as I've ever been a fan of Auburn that right then. I wanted them to win so bad. That was exciting. Great kickoff to an SEC start for Vanderbilt, or to a new season for the SEC for Vanderbilt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned too with the spread, this game was at 13 and a half. I took it at that. I thought, to me, that was one of my favorite picks of the weekend. I just thought that was a little too rich, especially being at home, and like you said, Diego Pavia. I mean, I think they kind of take on his personality a little bit. Like, you can already tell he's a big leader on that team, and they had quite a few transfers come over from New Mexico State, the offense coordinator, as well. So, I mean, I believe he was a state wrestling champ coming out of high school. So, like, this guy's just tough. Like, he's willing to do whatever it takes to make plays. I mean, running the football, he's really effective, and like I said, just tough, willing to do what it takes, and give his body up. He's not worried about that at all. So I think he's going to fit in really nicely there and help that program out a lot. And I think he's already paying dividends. So yeah, just really big win for Vandy there to start off the season. I mean, that's a super quality win. Looking forward to seeing where they can go from here. The rest of their schedule. I mean, their over unders 2.5 wins, so obviously now they got a great shot to go past that, and maybe surprise some more people. I mean, if they can dictate things on the line of scrimmage the way they were, then they're going to have a good shot in some of their games this year. So excited to see where they go from here. Did want to kind of talk about another game in Atlanta with the Georgia Bulldogs, Clemson Tigers. I felt like this game went about what we thought in our preview. The only thing I will say is I did expect Clemson to move the ball a little bit more, be able to generate some more offensively. But I'm going to be honest, that just was not happening, wasn't going to happen, apparently. I was just super impressed with Georgia, like they've done so many times, but this defense is so fast, so athletic, so physical. There just was not a chance for Clemson to get much going all afternoon. And like Georgia's done many of times, they just slowly squeeze Clemson to death. I mean, that's the best way to describe it, really. Um, you know, an ugly first half overall. I mean, it's 6-0 at halftime. Georgia's not able to do much offensively, a little bit out of sync early. But in the second half, they just kept getting chances. Their defense kept giving them the ball back. And then Georgia eventually, when they get that many opportunities, they're going to find their rhythm in the run game, in the pass game. And I think it kind of looked like a typical Georgia, second half, and just squeezed the life out of Clemson over 4 quarters. And by the end of the game, you look up and like, man, they beat them by 4 touchdowns. And so I don't think it was super surprising. I did think Clemson would be able to move it a little bit better than they did, but all in all, it was it was kind of a prototypical Georgia performance. Especially early in the year, man, you just don't see them unprepared. I mean, a Kirby team's going to be prepared, especially when they have a lot of time to prepare and get ready for a game. When you beat them, you just out execute them. It's not because they're unprepared. And I think that's just what you saw in this game. They just wore them out over 60 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of money on this game too, on Georgia. I thought, I'm gonna be honest, we talked about it. We did both think they were going to cover. We thought they were going to win handily. We did give Clemson, I believe I gave them 10 to 13 points, and you might have given them 10 to 15, 10 to 17 around there. I mean, we both gave them at least that much. I mean, we were respecting them enough to say they're going to score a touchdown and kick a field goal at least. But man, they couldn't get anything going. I believe they ran for like 60 something yards total. Georgia's defense just dominated. Excuse me. And honestly, the running game is what I was curious to see about from Georgia. because ETN was suspended. Uh, Nate Frazier, he showed up. He had 11 carries for 80 something yards, a touchdown. So he's probably going to be the tandem back with ETN when he returns this week. Carson Beck looked as good as we all remember him from last year, if not a little better. Over 270 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pieced together a bunch of really, really, really good drives. They leaned on the run game. They ran the ball well, but they were able to air it out a little bit. I believe he targeted 11 different receivers. Carson Beck did. Had a bunch of different guys with 3 or 4 plus catches. So he threw the ball around, spread the ball around for real. Clemson's defense, what we always knew was their strength, looked really good in the first half. In the second half, they had no answers for anything. I mean, whatever Georgia did, they did at their will, and they just dominated over and over and over and over and over again. You saw in that second half, Clemson did not deserve to be on the field with them at all. I hate it for Clemson, I really do, because man, they were once on top of the college football world, and now they're an afterthought. It seems like nobody that's actually at the top of the college football world right now is even worried about Clemson or even thinks about Clemson. Clemson may not even make it to their conference championship game this year, which is crazy. So it's like I was very, very, very shocked with the play of Clemson. I wasn't shocked about anything with Georgia. I knew Georgia was going to look good, but I thought Dabo would have some answers for him in the second half, and they would at least be able to move the ball a little bit. But we talked about last week, or whenever we recorded it, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, and we talked about, Cade Klubnik or Clemson and having 2 generational quarterbacks back-to-back times, and that's a big part of what made them who they were. And Cade Klubnik is just not that guy. He's a good college quarterback, but he's not a college quarterback that's going to take you to a national championship game or take you through the college football playoffs if you even do get there. He's not the answer. Good player, but not the one you need. He doesn't hold a candle to either Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence. So that's what you got to have, man. I mean, you look around college football, and everybody that's in there in the end and has a chance in the end, that's dominates all year, they have a damn good quarterback. And I just don't think Cade Klubnik's that guy. And unfortunately for Clemson, Carson Beck is that guy, and he was on the other side of the field. So, nothing really huge takeaways here from Georgia because it's about what we expected of them. We're going to learn the new guys' names. KJ Bolden, former big-time 5-star recruit, there was some – at first he was going to go to Florida State, and he decommitted to Florida State, and everybody thought he was going to go to Auburn. Well, then people thought he was going to go to Bama, and then he ends up at Georgia. Well, he plays on Saturday, and he does extremely well. He's going to play a long time alongside Malachi Starks back there in the backfield for Georgia this year. So I'm excited to see how he does, young guys. It becomes mind-blowing to me when you have a team like Alabama was under Nick Saban or a team like Kirby is now under Georgia, and it's no longer are they going to finish inside the top 5? It's just which number recruiting are they going to finish inside the top 5, because they just get their pick at the litter of all the 5-stars, and they got a roster littered with 5 stars and 4 stars and maybe some 3 stars here and there. And he's able to go in there and start year one, game one, in a huge game. I mean, Georgia-Clemson, huge game, and you got a true freshman back there start. I know they had an injury on the other side, to the other safety, and that's a reason why he's playing. But he looked the part, and he played extremely well. Had some really good tackles. Had a first down saving tackle or ended the drive. So I was very surprised or pleased with watching him, and just honestly shocked with how bad Clemson looked.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this game too, and I look at the 247. The talent composite. They do a ranking of your entire roster, where it ranked in recruiting, and compile all of that. So they give you a ranking of, basically who are the most talented teams in the country. This Clemson team is the 5th most talented team in the country, according to that composite rankings, based on where they recruited over the past handful of years and what's on the roster. This does not look like the 5th most talented roster. I mean, in reality, I don't think it is. I mean, there's a lot more rosters out there that are dynamic than what Clemson has speed wise. They're good on defense, especially the defensive front. But to me, the biggest difference between Clemson now and some of their past teams. I mean, obviously the quarterback obviously is a big key to that. You had two, unbelievable talents in Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, and you haven't had that since then. But to me, the skill positions, Clemson always had some dudes on the outside that could go make plays. To
T.
me,
Higgins, Justin Ross, people like that.
yeah, they had difference makers on the outside. To me, that I mean, they have pretty good players out there now, but it's just they don't have difference makers like they had in the past. Um, and you can't tell me, they couldn't go in the transfer portal and go get them a dude. Three or four dudes would make a huge difference on this team at some key positions. You're telling me them getting in the sweepstakes for Cam Ward wouldn't make a big difference, or some of these receivers you see in the portal, or what name your position. Go get you a couple difference makers on each side of the football. That makes a big difference. I mean, I think you see it with Miami. Look at some of the guys they got out of the portal, what a difference they made. It just, it doesn't make any sense to me not to utilize it. It's like you're just going to die on that hill of, doing it the way you've always done it. And that's his right to. But at the end of the day, the games are going to decide it for everybody. And, you're going to find out one way or the other because the games have to be played. So, if he wants to continue being, a next tier down program, a top 15, the 15th best program or whatever, then he can keep doing it the way he's doing it. But I think there's a chance for them to get back in the conversation of being an elite program again, but they got to make changes. And I'm not sure they're going to do that, but until then, they're not going to be able to match up with teams like Georgia and Ohio State and Texas and Alabama and Oregon and some of those teams at the top. They're a tier down from that quality of athlete right now. So I don't know how much more. Not saying he's going to get run off or anything, but I think Clemson fans, like, if you're okay with being the 15th best, then it'll keep going like it's going. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Like, I think they're going to get restless, get beat down by some of the elite teams when they used to be in that. They used to be the one doing the beating. Now they're the one taking the beating.
Mm-hmm.
So still a good program, still got good players, but unless some changes are made, I think it's going to stay the way it's been the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and then you're talking about no skill players or lack of the power of skill players that Clemson has, and then you look at Georgia and all the skill players they lost last year, and you're like, okay, well, how are they going to do? And they did just fine. I mean, they got London Humphreys, got transferred in from Vanderbilt. He had a touchdown, 2 catches, and over 60 yards receiving. Aaron Smith had a pretty good day. Kobe Young had a good day, had another touchdown. Dominique Lovett, Lawson Lucky, Dylan Bell. I mean, they just roll out a list of 7, 8 other guys that are just as good, if not better, than the guys that came before them. And that's some of these. I mean, look, the guy that led them in receiving yards Saturday, London Humphreys, 2 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. Did he start his career at Georgia? No. He started at Vanderbilt. He left because he wanted to better himself. And Kirby said, well, he can better our program. I'm going to go get him. That's what Dabo's not doing. I get he does a great job out of high school. But in today's world, you have to go to the portal. If a piece is there that will take your team from good to championship contender or championship contender to championship favorite, if there's a piece or two through the portal you can get that makes your team that next step better, why would you not do it? And I feel like there's been guys out there who doesn't want to go play for Clemson, especially 3-4 years ago when all that hype's been around them. They were on top of the college football world. But he didn't strike while the iron was hot, and now it's nobody wants to go play for him. It's Dabo he hasn't ruined his image. Like, nobody thinks bad about him, but he's definitely ruined what people think about him as a college football coach and his program for sure. And he's done it to himself. Everything that everybody thinks about Dabo Swinney now and his program is all done from Dabo Swinney, 100%. And all the just corny, goofy things he said, how he's going about certain things. Then you look at all the top programs in the country that are vying for championship spots, and it's, Oh, they got 5 or 6 guys starting on offense from the portal, 3 or 4 on defense. Oh, well, they got 20 guys from the portal, and 12 of them are starting on both sides of the ball. And it's just, it clearly, it's not the only way. And it's not, Ole Miss that's the only way they did it. They went straight to the portal to build their team, and then they had a few of their remaining pieces. It's not the only way, but it's definitely the only way to stay afloat in today's world, because every team that is in that top of college football competing for the finals, they all have guys from the portal that they've gone out and they've gotten to strengthen their team from lower level schools and from schools on the same playing field as them. And it does involve NIL, but if you want to stay competitive and you want to be a team where you are competing in the end, then you're going to have to sack up and do some NIL, whether you like it or not. Lane Kiffin's the best at it, and he's the one of the ones that's most outspoken against it. Yet he's one of the best at it. So it's not that he's not just doing it because he doesn't want to. That's what he says. I think he's too stubborn and is trying to prove to everybody that he doesn't need it and he can do it without it. Yet that's turned around to bite him right in the ass. Now, I could be 100% wrong. Never talked to the dude a day in my life. But from the way I see him act to phone callers, to naysayers, to comments on social media when it gets brought up to him and how he talks about the media or talks to the media at times, that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically just taken one of the top ways to acquire talent now. It's not even kicking the tires on it, basically. I mean, he's totally disregarding it. I mean, nobody's saying, and we know from the successful programs, like you don't really need to be portal reliant. You need to build through high school recruiting. That's still the best way to do it and supplement your team through the portal, each year based on needs that you have. But you can't just totally disregard it either, because I mean that's one of the best ways to acquire talent now, and it's something that you can do year in and year out. And he's not even, at least from by all regards, it doesn't seem like he's even interested in it too much, because he hasn't added anybody or really seemed to show much interest in it. So, I think it's a crazy thing with Dabo, and it shows you how the last couple of years have went. Who would have thought just a handful of years ago that Nick Saban would retire and Dabo would not even get any consideration for the job? That's how big of a deal it's been the last few years. And I guess the fall off, you can say. I mean, this was a guy that was not even a candidate. Like it was never even a second thought hardly to even look at Dabo. And that to me is mind blowing. Like if you would have told me that 3 or 4 years ago, that would have been crazy. Like there's no way he's not under consideration at least.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was never even a factor in it. I mean, that just goes to show you, like, just you have to be able to adapt and use all means of getting talent in your program, and you're just kind of tying one hand behind your back basically when it comes to acquiring talent to make your team better. So we'll see. Like you said, I'm not confident that's going to change, but it's his program. He can run it as he sees fit. But at the end of the day, the results are going to be the judge of it. So we're going to find out, and we've been finding out whether it works or not. So we'll see. But I think until further notice, they're going to be, a step behind, with some of the elite teams, the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Texas, as the ones we mentioned. And to be honest, he's probably going to be a step behind of even Miami in the ACC now, because they're definitely, they're doing well high school recruiting wise, but they're also utilizing the portal. And you've seen what a boost that's given to them, just even from last year to this year. So we'll see where it goes. But I think until further notice, they're going to be, a step behind some of the elite teams in the country. And I do want to talk about another team that's quite a few steps behind right now, and that's the Florida Gators. And this was an ugly, ugly performance in the swamp against Mario Cristobal's Miami Hurricanes, who we just talked about a little bit. You've heard that saying before. I'm sure people have said it, only Gators make it out of the swamp alive. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. At 2:30 on Saturday afternoon, a Category 5 hurricane hit Ben Hill Griffin Stadium and flushed every Gator within 200 miles of there. It
Yep.
was an absolute beatdown. Um, this is a game we previewed. We thought Miami would win. I have to say, I was shocked at the disparity between these two teams, not only talent wise, but execution wise. I knew Miami, was overall a better roster coming in. I mean, adding Cam Ward obviously was a huge boost for them. And by the way, how fun is he to watch?
Mm-hmm.
But I was shocked at how big the discrepancy and the difference between the two teams was. I mean, like I said, not surprised Miami won, but in the fashion that it happened, and all in all, a pretty embarrassing performance for Florida in the first game of the season in your house, an in-state rival. Um, Man, I was shocked at the difference between the two teams and how big that difference was.
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty evident after the first quarter that Miami was going to win the game. There was no, oh, Florida's just got to make a few adjustments. They're back in, and no, it was big boy ball, and Miami was dominating. They Cam Ward, man, you are absolutely correct. There are about 5 or 6 teams out there right now, absolutely kicking themselves for not going after him or not being able to close the deal with him. Because there was a lot of people when he came out of Incarnate War going to Washington State. There was people saying, "Well, he's jumping to a level of football. He might not be as good as everybody expects." Well, he gets to Washington State and he is as good as everybody expects. And he has some things he had to work on, and he became a better passer from year 1 at Washington State to year 2. And there were still some people saying he might not be the greatest passer, and he might not be as good as everybody expects at Miami and the ACC because he's not the best passer. Well, he looked quite all right on Saturday. I think those naysayers and those things being said about Cam are no longer being said about him. Dude was 26 for 35 for 385, 3 touchdowns. He did have an interception. And he also ran the ball for 11 yards a carry for three carries on 33 carries for 33 yards. He led this offense up and down the field at will every single drive. I think, what did they punt 3 times? I'm trying to find that here. They punted. They punted 2 times.
Interception in the first quarter. There's a few throws he forced, kind of threw back across his body, across the middle of the field. One of them he threw for a touchdown.
Yeah.
He did get picked on one of those. But yeah, he threw a pick. They punted one.
I think they punted twice, is what this says.
Yeah, they punted twice. They missed a field goal, but other than that, it was pretty much touchdown drives.
Yeah, they ran the ball at will, but they didn't really have to run the ball too much because they were just throwing it all over the yard. Florida, man, I wasn't surprised. I knew what I said is I think Miami's going to run away with it because in the second half, because of the lack of depth on the Florida side. I thought they were going to hang with them for the first quarter or for the first half, but I didn't think they had the depth to hang with them for the whole game. They didn't even have the depth to hang with them for the first quarter. I mean, I don't even think it was depth was the problem. I think it was just lack of talent. I thought the people we thought was going to be good that was starting didn't play as well and up to the par we thought and the standard we thought they were going to play at. Graham Mertz, man, under 100 yards. They ended up taking him out of the game, and it wasn't because he was playing bad, man. You just don't want to get your starting quarterback hurt in game 1 when it's a blowout victory. So upside, you get to see DJ Lagway play a little bit. The only thing on that is Napier going to make it through the year? And if he doesn't, did you just get teased with DJ Lagway, then now you're going to watch him play against you somewhere else next year. So there's a lot of – I do know that if Billy Napier gets canned at the end of this year or any time this year, his buyout is $26 million. I mean, that's hefty. That's a hefty check right there. So I don't know that he will get bought out. I think he will. I think he 100% will get bought out and get fired by the end of the season. I mean, I've been predicting that since the offseason. I don't think he's going to make it. But there are some people saying out there that it's a $26 million buyout, and they may not. I mean, maybe a little rich for him, and they might give him another year. So I don't know. I don't know how Florida fans are feeling. I haven't been able to talk to any of them. But they definitely seemed very, very upset with him. and the team as a whole on Twitter and things along those lines. But I feel like a lot of the hate is coming towards Napier because they're saying it's the same old, same old. It looks no different than when he first got there, and not even just the talent and roster. It's just the effort and the product. We both said that the product was going to be better this year than it was last year, and I'm going to be real. Maybe Miami's just that good, but on Saturday the product looked worse than it did last year, and that's what shocked me the most.
Yeah.
I knew Florida or Miami was going to win. I really didn't have a doubt on it at all. But the product of Florida is what shocked me and what I was surprised by because again, didn't think they were going to win, but how they lost is what I was like, man, that is bad. You're going to tell me Graham Mertz is going to complete 11 passes when he has 20 attempts, no touchdowns and a pick? I mean, it was bad. DJ Ladwin didn't do too great either. I mean, six passes, three completions. He ran the ball a little bit more, but game was out of hand by that point.
Yeah.
But Miami is definitely the team in the ACC. I've seen no other ACC team play where, granted, we've only seen them all play one game and two of them play two games. It's not like it's middle of the year right now. But from what I saw on Saturday and Sunday this past week, I don't see a team in the ACC that's going to hold Miami under 30 points. And I just think they're going to be sitting there in the ACC championship just waiting to see who they're going to play. I don't think it's going to be Florida State. Actually, I don't think it won't be because they have two ACC losses. They're 0-2, have two ACC losses. And I don't think it's going to be Clemson, to be honest with you. I don't know who it's going to be, but I don't think Clemson or Florida State is going to be in the championship this year. I think it's going to be Miami and somebody else, and I think Miami's going to get it this year. Week one hot take.
Yeah, I definitely think it's theirs to lose. Obviously, this is kind of, especially if they keep winning, this is new territory for Miami. They have not won the ACC, I believe, since they've been in it, since 04. They've had at least 3 losses a year since 04. So this is kind of uncharted territory for Miami again, a long time. So I think the big thing is for them, they just got to keep growing, developing, not, kind of not letting the success get to your head and thinking you got it won already. Because, they are the most talented team in that league. They should be in the ACC championship game. I think they will be. I think the main thing for them is just make sure they take care of business and not, like I said, not getting complacent, basically thinking you're going to roll over people. I do agree with you, though. I think the ACC is there for the taking for them. They obviously, it's a big step in the right direction for them. Even the way Florida looked, for them to come in Florida's house and do what they did was extremely impressive. Cam Ward is a absolute pleasure to watch. He was phenomenal. Just makes it look so easy. The arm talent just kind of jumps off the screen to you. Some of the throws he can make. Had a couple layered throws over the top. Like I said, probably not something you want to get a habit of throwing back across the middle, but he made one throw, probably his best of the day, rolling left, kind of reset his feet and fired to the back of the end zone there on the end line and just threw an absolute dime. I was like, and at that point the route was on, but it was extremely impressive. Kind of cool though to see the U back a little bit, or looks like they can be back now. It's been a long time coming, but this was a game. You heard people in the offseason like, this is kind of a hot seat game. For Napier and Cristobal, and I know the first 2 years haven't been great for either coach, but the way you see Miami trending with the talent they brought in, I was like, even if they lost a close game, to me, Mario's nowhere near the hot seat. I never really bought into that talk at all. And we actually thought, Miami was going to be very good, and I think that is going to be the case. I think they're going to have a really nice season. But on the Florida, standpoint, like you said, I think it's going to be really tough waters here for Napier and company over the next few weeks. I want to see how they respond. Obviously, it doesn't get much worse than that, but with their schedule, it definitely can get worse. The wheels could really come off here if they're not careful. So I just want to see how they respond, kind of how he keeps the locker room together, and just to see if they stay motivated. Like, Or is this loss going to linger and really make them go on a slide? Or are they able to kind of get things together and, maybe beat A&M at home in 2 weeks? That's what I want to see, how they respond to it. Because, like I said, with this schedule, things can go off the rails pretty quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it can. And kind of staying on that, the going off the rails, Texas A&M and Notre Dame. Second half, it went off the rails for Texas A&M. They were in it in the first half. One of the really, really, really good defensive battle. Nothing but field goals in the first half. And then second half comes around, and I feel like, to me, it looked like, man, Notre Dame's not stopping Texas A&M's run game. I mean, they're running it pop, like 4 yards a pop, 4 yards a pop. Now, I felt like, I mean, in the first half, they ran the ball well, too. But especially starting the second half, they were running the ball extremely well. And I felt like they went away from the run a little bit. I felt like they leaned on the passing a little too much when they were running the ball as well as they were, to me. Notre Dame's defense played out of their mind. Connor Wigman was seeing ghost out there, threw 2 picks. It was honestly, I did say something about it last week when we were recording. I said he might not be as sharp as we remember him because he missed the back half of last season. He's had all off season, so he hasn't seen live college football in quite some time. So I knew he was going to be a little rusty, but man, he looked like he was seeing ghosts out there. He took complete ownership for it. He said, it was all on him. It was his fault, and he's got to be better. And offense runs through him, and he's the leader on that, and it all falls back on him. So props to him for taking the blame for it. But man, I mean, 12 for 30. He completed 12 balls, and they went back to the well 30 times. And then I just felt like they abandoned the run game a little too quick in the second half. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just how it felt to me. And then their receivers weren't great, but they were getting clamped up all game. I mean, Notre Dame's defense, their pass defense was phenomenal all night. And then Riley Leonard had a pretty good game. 18 to 30 for 158, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but he ran the ball 12 times for 63 yards. It's in that second half, it seemed like every other snap they were running the quarterback draw, and Riley Leonard was getting 7-8 yards a carry. Dude's tough as nails, man. Dude is absolutely tough as nails. Put a great bunch of great drives together. Leaned on their running backs a lot. I mean, Jeremiah Love, he had 91 yards on 14 carries and a touchdown. And then Jordan Price had 8 carries, 44 yards and a touchdown. So they really went on the ground game heavy. Neither team really just flashed it through the air. Riley Leonard was definitely the better quarterback of the two, though. But the main thing from me that I saw, both defenses looked great, but I just felt like A&M abandoned the run a little too quick there in the second half.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, obviously, like you said, Connor Wigman was definitely rusty. I mean, it was a very poor performance for him, no doubt about it. But I think the biggest surprise to me was, Notre Dame's offensive line only had 6 combined starts or 6 career starts between them coming into this game. Were able to run the ball pretty effectively. I mean, I thought A&M's D-line did a good job too. I think it was just more so of, I just think Notre Dame's O-line was able to hold up, better than people thought. Gave
Ran for
Riley
198.
Gave Riley Leonard a little bit of time to make some things happen. I mean, obviously nothing really jumped off the screen in this game. I mean, it was 23-13. I mean, it was pretty much a rock fight for most of the ball game. But obviously Notre Dame was able to do enough with their offensive line on the ground a little bit. Felt like Riley Leonard had more time to make things happen than Connor Wigman did. And Notre Dame, they felt good about their secondary coming into this game, matching up against A&M's receivers. I think that and obviously ended up being the case here. But really impressive win for Notre Dame. I mean, to come into that environment, I mean, it was absolutely jumping there in the second half and really all night, but especially in the fourth quarter in a tight game. That atmosphere was absolutely electric. And for them to kind of compose themselves and be able to get it done late in the game was really impressive. Obviously, people are gonna and it was a great win, but people are going to kind of maybe put Notre Dame on a little bit of a pedestal after this. Teams often get overhyped early in the season. I'm not buying into like I think Notre Dame's a really good team, but I don't think they're all of a sudden the top five team. I think they're eighth or tenth probably. But you look at their schedule, if they take care of business, you know, there's no reason they shouldn't be in the playoff. I mean, but at the same token, I'm not going to put them up in the top three. Like I think they're a good team, but teams tend to get overhyped early in the year. But all in all, it was a great win for them. Um, I thought maybe A&M was a little bit ready to go this year as far as like I thought they may be able to compete, or maybe I think I thought they were a little bit further along than what they ended up being. I don't think they're as far along as maybe I thought they would be, because I thought if they won this game, they would have a really, an outside chance to kind of be a playoff contender. But I don't think they're as far along as maybe what I thought and maybe what some other people expected from them. Um, I definitely think there's some things they got to work through, especially on the offensive side of the ball with Connor Wigman, getting his confidence back, getting him more in a rhythm. But it was a tough night for him, obviously. But all in all, I think it's more so just giving Notre Dame a lot of credit and that offensive line for holding up and being able to be more balanced than A&M was. But yeah, huge win for the Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. Their defense was the biggest thing for me. Notre Dame's was. I mean, that's what jumped off the page to me. Just constantly pushing them to forcing them to fourth downs, forcing them to field goals, stalling out drives, having turnovers. The first pick Connor Wigman threw, he was a little rushed. He had a little bit of pressure on him, but he just sailed it a little bit. He just overthrew it. And then the next one, Notre Dame just made a great play. Defensive back jumped in front of the ball, jumped the route. I mean, Connor Whitman probably shouldn't have thrown that ball, but the second pick was more of a defensive play than the first one. The first one, Wigman just straight up airmailed it a little bit. He had the guy wide open, but he airmailed it. So I do think it's obviously him being rusty, but you got to sharpen those things up. But the great thing about it is it's 12-team playoff. It's not the worst thing in the world if you don't make the conference championship, because you get that bye that we've talked about before you go play round one. So it's a long season. We've seen people lose in week one and then go and play in the conference championship and play in the postseason. So it can happen. But realistically, I'm a little bit lower on A&M now, seeing that, than granted, they got a long way to go. It's week one. I get it. Teams change and are much different. But I do feel a little bit different about A&M, and my prediction was I think they would be 8-5. 9-3 was their ceiling, is what I said. 8-4, 9-3 they're feeling. I think they're going to be more like a 7-6 team, 6-6 team after seeing that this weekend. Defensive wise, they're good, but their offense, they got to be able to move the ball down the field, man. I mean, I know this was a good defense, but I promise you, it's not going to be the best defense they face all year. Notre Dame's going to be a good defense all year, but it's not going to be the best defense Texas A&M faces all year. So that I feel like they're probably a 6-6, 7-6 ball club this year.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I agree with as far as their ceiling. I don't think they're, like I said, I don't think they're as far along, like as far as being competitive in 2024 as I thought they were. I think I'm a little bit, like I said, you don't draw conclusions on, week one, obviously, but
Right.
I do think they didn't really have the difference makers at wide receiver. Like I said, you mentioned with Connor Wegman being kind of rusty, not in reality really doesn't have a ton of experience because he's been hurt a lot. He doesn't really have a ton of reps that he didn't have near as many reps as a typical third year guy would have. I mean, in totality, really doesn't have a ton of games under his belt. So
Right.
I guess that was a little bit to be expected, but especially facing a really good secondary and a good front of Notre Dame too. But yeah, I'm not quite as high on them, but I still think there's a great opportunity to have a really good first season for Mike Elko and company. I did want to get your thoughts on this USC LSU game, which pound for pound probably the best game of the weekend. Um, thought it. I mean, my initial take was really well played game. I thought on both sides. I mean, it was a really really entertaining ball game, and to me, it was one of those rare games where I looked at. I thought both quarterbacks played phenomenal, but I also thought both defenses played really strong too. And honestly, I came away really, I think, with just as much positive or more so about both teams. I'm definitely higher on USC if they can play defense at that level or even close to it. But honestly, I'm not as down on LSU as I maybe you would expect or I thought I would be because I thought they played a solid game overall. I just kind of have to tip my hat to USC. What did you think about the game Sunday night?
Yeah, same as you, man. USC, watching it, they definitely were in control the whole game. I thought that LSU not recovering one of the fumbles that USC had really, really, really hurt them. LSU or USC fumbled twice, and they recovered both fumbles, and they were kind of late in the game. One was late in the third, I believe. One was like middle of the fourth. But LSU had a chance to take the ball back there. But they were up 17-13 in the fourth quarter, I believe. And there was about 8 or so minutes left, and LSU got the ball, and I'm like, all right, all they need is two or three first downs, and then they run the clock out, and they're going to win. And apparently that's all LSU was thinking too, because they ran the ball, punted the ball. USC drives down and scores. And LSU doesn't score, and then USC drives down and scores, and it's like, oh my God. LSU 100% had the game won, and they just could not figure out a way to close it. They had the game won. 100% they did. Brian Kelly, I mean, they're in their last 5 seasons, they've started out 0-1. So in his first 3 seasons, they've started the season out 0-1. I know that's frustrating, and I know it's not just against some slouch team, but they had the game won, man. I mean, you have the ball in your hands. You're up 4 points, and you got the ball to start a drive in the last quarter with, I believe it was 8 minutes or less, and you can't find a way to get the job done.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty bad. And then they had, I believe it was in the fourth quarter, they had a chance to get a first down, and a guy didn't run the sticks or something along those lines. I could be remembering a different ball game. I watched a bunch of football this weekend. But all in all, you are right. It was a great game. USC is a lot better than I expect them to be. Miller Moss is a damn good quarterback. I do think, though, that they're going to have to run the ball a little bit more to be successful as they were on Saturday all year. They only ran the ball for 60-something yards. Let's see what their total was. They ran the ball for 69 yards on 23 carries for 69 yards. So they're going to have, I mean, it was balanced. I mean, balanced enough. They threw for 378 yards. They did perfectly fine. They won the ball game. I just feel like to be consistent in that all year, they're going to have to run the ball a little bit more. Man, I was talking, or not on here, but to people, anybody that would listen, I would talk crap about Lincoln Riley all week leading up to this game, all off season. I was like, man, LSU's going to blow them out of the water. I had LSU big. I had a lot of money on this game. I had LSU winning this game. Obviously, it did not work out. But Lincoln Riley, I was not worried about him at all. LSU's going to win this game by 3 touchdowns. And, man, they just let it slip away. And then Brian Kelly slams his fist on the table after the game. I'm like, I get you're frustrated, buddy, but that ain't the place to do it. Why are you talking to the media like that? You talk to your team like that. We ain't the ones that need to hear this. The fans and the media don't need to hear this. We know you're mad. Trust me, we know you're mad. No coach wants to lose. Why are you slamming your fist at us? You know what I mean? Like, and then he's complaining about his team and stuff. Like, everybody on the sideline thinks you already got the game won. It's like, well, what? I get he's frustrated just letting it out, but that's you, man. That's his fault. That is nobody but his fault. I don't know, man. Again, you are right. I came away very pleased with both teams. A lot higher on USC than I was going in. Not any more down on LSU than I was. I think that they're going to be just. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier threw the ball 40 times and completed 30 passes, or 39 times for over 300 yards and a couple touchdowns. He did have one pick though, but LSU's going to be fine. They're going to have to find their identity for sure. But they long season, long season. They're going to be fine. They're going to be in it. The good thing for them is they play a schedule that will benefit them if they can, win their games. If they win out or only lose one more game, they're going to be in it in the end. Their schedule benefits them that enough to do that. But they're going to have to win a lot more ball games though if they want to be there in the end. Because losing week one definitely puts you behind the eight ball. But I'm going to be honest. Lincoln Riley, yes, he did win this game. Still not a huge fan of him. Still not super high on him. I don't think USC makes it to the college football playoffs. I think they get beat by 2 or 3 teams they shouldn't get beat by this year, and I don't think they make it to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I thought, you look at the rushing stats, you make a good point. I think definitely USC is going to have to run the ball a little bit better to win, win some of these games they have on their schedule. I think with LSU, you look at their rushing stats, not bad by any means, but I think they expected to be able to lean on them a little bit more,
Mhm.
especially with the offensive line that they have. In the second half, I think he said it. Brian Kelly said in his halftime interview, like we need to run the ball better in the second half, and I just didn't feel like they were really able to run it as good as they thought they could, maybe, or maybe they should have, I guess. But like you said, both quarterbacks absolute phenomenal in this game. I think this is a prime example for quarterbacks out there to not bail every time things get tough. And I mean, these two guys are the poster childs for staying at your program, developing, continuing to grow week by week, year by year, and then being able to shine when it's your opportunity. Garrett Nussmeier, you could just tell both these quarterbacks knew exactly where to go with the football. You could tell they knew their systems in and
Mhm.
out, always in the right spot with the football. They were both accurate. They were both on time. I mean, it looked like guys who have been in those systems multiple years, and I think it's going to pay off big time for both those guys this year. I think they're going to have great seasons for their teams. And it was really good football. Honestly, there were some great catches made on the USC side. I mean, they went out and they earned it. Um, if I agree with you. I don't think they're going to be in the playoffs, but I will say this about them: if they can play defense at that level or close to it, because deep down LSU is a very good offense. So I mean,
Mhm.
it wasn't like it was a fluke performance. And same on the LSU side. Like if they can play defense at that level, that was a really good offense on the other side, a really good play caller on the other side. So if both those teams can play defense at that level or pretty close to that, they're going to have, they're going to be in every ball game they play in if they can compete like that. I think from the USC side, I was just really impressed with how much leaner, how much more athletic they were. They looked like they were in the right spot. So USC defenses of the past several years just looked like they were out of place all the time. Guys running by them, just not fast enough, not physical enough. Those guys look like they completely transformed their bodies. Obviously, a new coaching staff, the defensive side helped them be more prepared. So, um, but if they can play defense like that, they'll be in every game they play and also and put themselves in position to, be a Big Ten contender, a playoff contender. I think definitely if USC's at that level, makes the Big Ten a lot more interesting for sure. Maybe a team that can get up and challenge some of the top teams in that league. And, LSU, like I said, not any more down on them than I was before. I was actually impressed with the way they played defensively. Obviously, just like any team, they have some things to work through. But Kyron Lacey kind of looks like he's that dude as we expect. He looks like he's next in line there in Baton
Mhm.
Rouge. So um, already kind of developing that chemistry with Nussmeier and looks like his go-to option early here. So yeah, I'm leaving feeling better about both teams and it felt like a playoff game. Honestly, that's the way how competitive it was, the environment and the level of play on the field. So yeah, I'm very interested to see both these teams going forward, but I'm not leaving feeling worse about either one of them.
Absolutely not. And then the rest of the SEC handled business. South Carolina had a little scare there, but they squeaked out and they got the win. but the rest of the SEC handled business throughout the weekend with the teams they were supposed to beat. So moving into week two, the biggest game to me, week two, Texas and Michigan. And if you're a betting man, and we all know I am, put your next paycheck on Texas minus 7.5. Idaho just took Michigan down to the wire this past weekend. Michigan barely beat them. Gave them all they could have. Texas is going to call it a look ahead game. Call it whatever you want. They ain't worried about playing Idaho. I get it. Blah blah blah. Don't care. Texas is going to dominate Michigan. Michigan does not have Jim Harbaugh anymore. Michigan does not have a lot of their guys. They don't have Blake Corum anymore. No J.J. McCarthy. They lost a lot of their defense to the NFL. It's a completely different Michigan team than what we're used to. No reason they should have a number beside their name. I know preseason rankings don't mean dick, but there's no reason that they should have a number beside their name. They are not a top 25 team. Texas is going to mop the floor of Michigan. I'm definitely going to put some coin on that game for sure. What's your thoughts on that game? I'm very interested to hear because I think we're on the same wavelength here, but I want to see where you're coming from for Texas and Michigan this week.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think Texas is a better team. So, roster wise, with Michigan having to replace all they, replace from a championship team. When you're saying Idaho, Oregon played them. They barely beat them.
That's Oregon. Yeah,
I agree. They played Fresno. They didn't
Fresno
look
State
great either.
That's who I meant. Not Idaho. Fresno State. Yes.
The point stands though.
Barely squeaked by them. Which Fresno State's a much better team than Idaho, but yes, barely squeaked by them.
Yeah, they ended up pulling away a little bit in the fourth quarter. It was tight early fourth quarter. They ended up scoring a couple late to pull away a little bit. They won 30-10. I agree with you. I think Texas wins this game. I wish I would have got the line a little bit low. This game was like a 3-point line like a few days ago. So it has shot up significantly. The only thing I will say it gives me a little pause, and I agree under most circumstances. I think Texas wins this game, and they probably will going away in the second half. I remember so vaguely, or not vaguely, vividly, the Alabama when they played Texas 2 years ago. Early season game, big line. People are thinking Alabama's going to go in. I think they ended up being like a 19-point favorite in that game. But obviously barely squeaked by in Austin. I do respect Michigan's defense a lot. Like, I think their defense is still elite. I think this game can be close early. I don't trust Michigan's offense to keep it close for 4 quarters. A lot of people thought Alex Orji was going to start for them. Davis Warren ended up, a former walk-on, ended up getting the start against Fresno. I would assume he's going to start this week against Texas as well. I just think Texas got too much firepower for Michigan for 4 quarters. Like I said, going to be a great environment, obviously. Think Michigan with their defense can probably hang in a little bit. But I just do think over 4 quarters, I just think too much talent on that Texas side. I really liked what I saw from them in week 1. So, yeah, if I'm taking it, I like Texas to win. I like Texas to cover. I just think there's too many pieces to replace for Michigan, especially on the offensive side. And I just think, as I said, just too much firepower from Texas for 4 quarters. I think they're going to go on the road and have a nice performance.
Absolutely. I no doubt in my mind that Texas is going to win that game by more than a touchdown. The big games coming up this week, other than that, it's Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Cal's coming to Auburn, South Carolina, and Kentucky. And then Tennessee, North Carolina State, and Mississippi State and Arizona State. But those 2 teams, I don't know if you call that a big game. That's definitely just a helmet game. But going into Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Arkansas looked really, really good against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Granted, they're supposed to look really, really good against Arkansas Pine Bluff. You can definitely tell that it is a Pitino offense for sure. You can definitely tell that it's a Pitino offense. Looks much different than Arkansas has looked in quite some time. The quarterback play is much different because it's a much different type of quarterback than KJ Jefferson was. Taylor Green, I think all the fans in Arkansas are going to love him by the end of the year. I didn't get to watch Oklahoma State this past weekend, so I really don't know a whole lot about Oklahoma State. if I'm picking, I'm probably going to pick Oklahoma State to win this game. I think they're just better roster wise than Arkansas is. They open up as a touchdown or 8-point favorite, so they're a 7.5-point favorite. Oklahoma State is. What's your thoughts on this? I thought Arkansas played extremely well, but it's the same way with Auburn and Alabama after this past week, and Tennessee and all those teams and Ole Miss. I mean, yes, they looked fantastic and they looked really good on their week one, but they didn't. They'd have been honestly, they would have been better off scrimmaging against each other another week. I mean, just being real, they would have been better off scrimmaging against each other for another week when it comes to talent. Yeah, you want to see yourself against another team and blah blah blah, but this is the real first test for all these teams because Arkansas, you really can't make a real assumption of them, or Alabama, or Auburn, or Ole Miss. You can't make a real honest assumption of them after week one because of who they played. They didn't play an Oregon, they didn't play a Clemson or somebody like that. They played some local high school teams, so you really don't know what to expect with them. So I'm not betting this game this week, but I do think Arkansas is going to be much better this year than they were last year in these bigger games. Not that they weren't in them. They lost a lot of, one possession games last year and the year before, but I think their offense is going to be much better and actually be able to finish drives and get them in the end zone this year with their quarterback and the scheme they're running.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this game is going to be pretty competitive. I mean, obviously not a huge, it's a single digit line, obviously, but like you said, really can't take a whole lot from some of the week one matchups. I mean, these teams did what you would expect them to do. I mean, I was really impressed with Arkansas. I mean, absolutely splattered Pine Bluff all over the field.
Mm-hmm.
It was an impressive performance for sure. I mean, even playing somebody like that. So I'm really curious about this game. Like, I'm very interested in it to see if can they possibly spring an upset here. I think it's going to be a really competitive game, though. I think they have a chance in this game. So I'm like I said, I don't have a great feel of it just because I feel like I don't know much about either team. Um, I know obviously from Arkansas standpoint, you got to slow Ollie Gordon down. One of the best players in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely one of the best running backs in the country. So, you
He won
got
the
to.
Doak Walker Award last year, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah, you got to keep him in check. Obviously, it's going to be critical to this game, but I'm excited I feel like obviously we're going to find out much more about Arkansas in this game, and that's a really intriguing matchup to me. South Carolina, Kentucky, South Carolina, squeaked one out against Old Dominion. You know, it's on the road in Kentucky. I will say this about South Carolina. I saw some Dylan Stewart, the freshman edge rusher for South Carolina. I saw some of his
Oh,
tape. Dude, man, that dude is unreal.
he's so fast, bro.
His
So
feet off
fast.
the edge, dude. He is, man. Dude, literally he was getting around the tackle without even a finger being laid on. Yeah, he is extremely impressive. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this game. Like I said, hard to take away from week one, whether good or bad, but I'd expect Kentucky to win this game at home, obviously. But Dylan Stewart definitely a difference maker for South Carolina, and first road test it would definitely be an intriguing game. Obviously, I know you have your eyes on Cal against Auburn. Sam Jackson revenge game. Obviously, everybody's looking forward to that. Um, but I definitely think we're going to see more explosiveness from Auburn's offense this go around than what we saw last year. I think that's pretty evident from week one. Those young receivers, man, they can really go. No doubt about it. Definitely has a totally different offensive feel to it this year. Like I said, no, it's against Alabama A&M, but I do think you can. The difference is pretty evident early on. Um, yeah, I think Auburn's going to win this game pretty handily. Honestly, well, the line's 13. I'm looking at now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't think it's going to be like a year ago. I mean, I don't know exactly how decisive it's going to be, but I do think Auburn ends up winning this pretty handily. Again, don't feel like you know a ton about either team, but being at home, obviously your classic SEC ACC matchup Auburn against the California Golden Bears. Your typical SEC ACC matchup here. Um, so going to be interesting. Obviously, a step up in competition. Alabama's kind of getting the same, going from Western, Kentucky to I think a pretty sneaky good USF team. We saw these were two games last year that were both ugly. I'm expecting much prettier games this year.
Yeah.
And then your nightcap, Tennessee and NC State. To me, another interesting game. Um, I think Nico, from what you saw, I know it was against Chattanooga. The dude looks like he is going to be a superstar. I
Yeah.
mean, he has got all the tools. He's got all the talent, the arm strength, man. The way the ball comes out of his hand. Um, I think he's going to be a bona fide superstar the next 2 years. And just based on week one, that looked a whole lot like Tennessee's 2022 offense. I mean, that was an impressive display. I think they win this game against NC State, but obviously gonna be a good test, a neutral site game in Charlotte there. But I like Tennessee to win this game. I think Nico is going to kind of introduce himself more on a national stage, and um, if he can play at the level that we think he's capable of, and that the Tennessee staff thinks he's capable of, it's going to be potentially a really special season for Tennessee. But I'm looking forward to seeing that step up in competition this week for him.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled it's back. We finally got a week under our belt. We are full swing here. No more talking about it. We are living in it, and it is the best time of year, and it's here for another 4.5 months. I'm so excited, man. I am so excited to see how this season plays out, what things matter, why they matter for the playoff, and then obviously end of the year, not rushing it at all, but obviously end of the year, who makes it to the college football playoff, how all that works out, and how the seeding plays out and all that. I mean, it is we've been talking about this season for 4 years, Cam, for 4 years. And it's finally here, and it feels like we're in a dream, dude. It is. I mean, I'm floating. I'm on cloud nine.
Yeah, I feel too. I mean, this season doesn't feel like there's a ton of elite teams. Like I think that's ultimately going to end up being the case. I
Right.
think there's a ton of really good teams out there. I think the parity between the top, say 15 or 20 teams, I just think is really close. Obviously there may be a couple teams that kind of maybe separate themselves a little bit from the pack, but I just feel like for the most part that top 1 through 20, I just think it's going to be really tight. I mean, even in the SEC, man, I just think those top 7 or 8 spots, it's going to be really curious to see kind of who kind of shaking out for position there throughout the year. I mean, I just think there's so many quality teams there at the top. I just think the parity is really strong. And I think there's going to be some surprising games this year just due to that. But yeah, just man, I'm really pumped. I did want to mention too. I know it's obviously not going to get a ton of national attention, but I'm looking forward to that Mississippi State Arizona State game late at night, 9:30 kickoff. Um, did get to catch a little bit of Mississippi State. Went back and watched some of their highlights. I liked a lot of what I saw. I mean, obviously, like you said, a lot of this is a grain of salt because of the competition in week one for most of these teams. But again, like Tennessee, like Auburn, like Alabama, like a lot of these teams in week two are taking a sizable step up in competition. I want to see what Blake Shape and this Mississippi State offense can do on the road. I mean, I know Arizona State not a juggernaut, but still a pretty good test there, and I am curious to see how they play on the road. This game's jumped up. I think when I looked earlier, may have been a few days ago, but this line was like 2.5, maybe 3.5, jumped up to 6.5 for Arizona State. Yeah, opened at 3.5, jumped to 6.5. So a lot of Arizona State, money there. But I
We
don't
might have
know.
to get on that for Mississippi State.
Yeah, I think Mississippi State can absolutely win this game. I mean, I like I said, don't know a ton about these teams yet, but I don't know. I feel pretty good about Mississippi State's chances to maybe go out and win this game at Arizona State. Um, but yeah, just excited to see it. I mean, obviously not a ton of just juggernaut matchups in week 2, but I think you got some really intriguing ones. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to find out, a lot more about these teams. And, um, like I said, not the toughest games they're going to play on the schedule, but again, I think an opportunity for us to find out a lot more and get a better feel of where some of these teams are at early in the season.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna be honest, there's a lot of talk about the USF and Bama game this year because of what happened last year and all that stuff. They're a much different team, much better team. But I don't think the USF Alabama game shakes out the way it did last year if there's no quarterback controversy that week. If Jalen Miller doesn't get benched that week, I don't think that game shakes out the way it does. Because you bench quarterback going into a game week, it shakes up a lot of things. So I think people are putting a lot of weight in that, and I don't think it needs to be. I don't think it's going to be even close of a ball game this year. Alabama's going to get their revenge. They're at home, and they're gonna mop the floor with USF. What's that line right now?
31.
Bama's a 31-point favorite. Yeah, that's what they closed at, or that's what they opened up at with Western Kentucky. We saw how that worked out. I don't think USF's going to be able to hang with them the way that they were last year. Bama's going to score way more than 13 or whatever it was they scored last year. So it's or 17, whatever the final ended up being. I think Bama covers this game.
I can confirm that Alabama will not start a lacrosse player this year at quarterback. I can make that prediction or statement with 100% certainty. That will not happen this year. I do agree with you. Obviously, I think kind of like I said with both Alabama, USF, Auburn, and Cal. I don't think those games are going to be ugly like they were a year ago.
No.
I think both teams are much different. Obviously, there's not a quarterback controversy with Alabama now. You're not going to have that going into the week. Obviously, they're not going to be coming off a loss either. I just think that was just one of those scenarios. They just obviously were still figuring themselves out and were not playing well at the time. Definitely feel much better about that this time. But I will say in the same breath, too, like, I do think USF is better than people think. Like, when you look at their name and think of South Florida, like, I think this team has a good chance to win their conference. I mean, there's a very, realistic possibility that they could be in the playoff or be a playoff contender and get that group of 5 spot possibly. They do have Alabama and Miami both on their schedule, so that's obviously going to be tough for them. But, if they can win their conference, there's very good chance they could find themselves in the playoffs. So, not saying that's going to happen, but I do think they're at the upper echelon of the American Athletic Conference. So I do think it's a pretty good team. Alex Golesh was the offense coordinator at Tennessee a few years ago under Josh Heupel. He's in his now, I think, second season there. So to me, this is a good test for Alabama just from a schematic standpoint too, because this team's going to throw at you a lot of what Tennessee's going to throw at you later in the year. So I think it's a good thing to see this early. A team that's going to want to throw the football, but that's going to want to take some shots down the field as well. So yeah, I think USF is better than probably what people may think. But in the same token, like I said, I think you're getting a much more focused and a much more, Alabama team that's sure of themselves, I think. Obviously not having a quarterback controversy. And yeah, I agree with you. I do think they handled business this time. But like many teams in the league are getting a definite step up in competition this week.
Absolutely.
I want to, appreciate everyone tuning in and hope they enjoyed their week 1. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Really appreciate that. Our Auburn, Texas preview video was the highest we've ever done, and appreciate everyone.
Damn.
Yeah, making that a big video for us. Just like I said, just hopefully y'all keep tuning in, enjoying the content. Obviously, it's a lot more fun now being able to break down games and look ahead a little bit. So just a really exciting time for all of us. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Saturdays_SEC. And just really appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoy week 2. And we'll be back next week to break it all down.
See you guys. Thank you.